prior. Like I said, we like a variety on this stage. The talent show brings all to your entertainment value here. So, I'm really excited about this. I have not seen this guy perform live before, but very good friend of mine, very important person to me. I hope you enjoy it. Please give a very warm welcome. It's going to bring some poetry to your ears, Mr. Brian Vernon.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. So I thought because poetry is a little bit new that I might start off with the cover, and that way we can all kind of get into it. A little short one, and then I'll jump into my stuff, all right? So I'll throw a blank out here for you, and just kind of a little 1-minute test run. Tiger, tiger, burning bright, in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant depths or skies burn the fire of thine eyes? For when thy eyes, in what distant depths or skies burn the fire of thine eyes? For when thy, oh, sorry, I'm just fucking this up. Let's go to mine, y'all. Sorry. It's better. So I should have a prop for this, which is a bell. However, I have one thing to remember. Forgot it. A buddy of mine today gave me these as a little backup. So here we go. Do you remember that sweet sound? When they lay John Henry down. Some say it was the spike and hammer still ringing through the stone. Others figured it was a whirling chunk of iron that the machine had thrown. But brothers and sisters, I'm here to tell you, it was his heartbeat that made that last beautiful sound, just a moment before his mortal body fell to the ground. Now when some folks' heart gives out, it grinds and chirps of sin and despair. It's a chunk, a thud, a half swallow, and a muffled shout, and they're suddenly not there. But not John Henry's. It rang like a bell, for the pearly gates were opening for this black man who had just clubbed his way right through hell. And when the sledge slid out of his hands and hit the rock, it was the first recorded version of the mic drop. Now, some old country twangy tunes will tell you he was a family man with kids to save, but I was sent to tell you he was no better in name than a convict slave, tied to chain after a many a year running half the state of Louisiana after him a-comin'. Hopping the fence of his master's place one moonless bayou night, he followed the river north, keeping Big Frame hidden from sight. It was up around St. Lou, he heard some wee white folks, they talked rather queer, said they was building a road of rail, and if he'd work a nickel a day, why, they could smuggle him out of here. Now, Patty's no mellow man for the work versus a man for the drink, and they quickly learned to steady a spike and take odds of how far it would sink. Now, our John wasn't a giant of a man, he didn't even measure up to be 2 meters, but if you'd asked those Patties, they'd have told you, why, that was just the size of John's holy fucking St. Peter's. What they truly admired about the man the most was his heart, for with every wheelbarrow load and shovel, it was easy to see who wanted the worst to get to the West Coast. But our young John's luck was soon to turn sour. Sheriff's deputy come into camp that winter and asked for all the black men to appear that very hour. While the Rockies were frozen, there was no place he could have ran, and in just a few moments, chained in front of a mounted white man, again he did stand. Freezing in a boxcar towards the rising sun, tied to many of his fellows to make sure he couldn't run. The train barons were now carving through the hills of Appalachia at a pace of 3 an hour. Why, and with all this capitalist progress, they imported lots of muscle power. Yes, sir, a proud young nation it was back east. But John and his fellows couldn't have cared for that bullshit in the least. Those trains were never going to serve him or bring a letter of freedom to his door. He began to despair, finding nothing to look forward to anymore. And it was in one of those troubled dreams he thought he almost cried in fright. A strange warm glow into his cell descended, and a pact was made that night. Not between salesman and taskmaster, nor the overzealous damned. You see, it turned out John was only half a man. The other half was noble, sacred, born of a godly seed, and the light that night described to John what the world of him did really need. Mankind, the world around, was loosening their way in life, and in order to loosen John's mortal bonds, the light demanded one more sacrifice. Humanity needed a new demigod, for Hercules had grown old, a man who could show them what their frail bodies could do, once it was made bold. So he struck at that iron, at the face of the deputy and the white master before him, and he struck at that iron, at the face of the guard and the pig-headed warden. And he struck at that iron, at the block of wood his mother was sold on when he was only 5. And he struck at that iron in tribute to the power of his people, dead, contemporary, and still alive. And he struck at that iron with the steam and the ugly crowd was so loud. He struck at that iron and struck at that iron to show those white men it was their head that would soon be bowed. He struck at the chains that cut his ankles by day and struck at the hunger that cut his belly by night. He struck at that iron and struck at that iron with all his godly might. He let them feel his noble rage, with spite mixed in there too. The steel was so work-hardened it longitudinally split in two, and when the shaker pulled that broken rod from the hole, a drop of molten granite fell to his shoe. Justice being done, vengeance cataloged and stored, it was now his time to join the overlord, and that was when they heard it, that one long, lone tone. Some say it was God's own train arriving, coming to take his son home. And when the machine screeched and smoked, the audience gasped at what that half-starved black man had done. Wrestle lions, beat hydras, the great sea serpent he could have outswung. But those fools had wasted our hero, knowing not what they had in their hands. They had chained a mortal being, but soon a God over them he would stand. He came to teach us about equality and love, that we have everything we already need, and that we can do without the smoke of coal and other men's greed, and that with enough heart, we can have all we desire, and do it burning a lot less fire. And in what hole they laid him, there isn't a mark on this earth. Just like the half-gods before him, we still know little of his birth. But ever your grip is failing, or you need just go one more round. Think about this bell again, and that little crystal clear sound. And you'll hear John Henry's heartbeat ringing in your ears. Let the rage and the steady blows drive away your fears. Some pray to Ishtar with her club held high. Others beg Thor's mallet a blessing when the danger of flagging is nigh. Maybe Vulcan is your deity with his great forge, quaking the rocks deep under. Or perhaps Lug of the Tuana Day claps your heavens with thunder. But me, I have a hammer god who's closer to my chest, one who since childhood is seated above all the rest. A flesh and blood man, not ancient make-believe, he carved his legend right through our land so that we may all still see. So keep striking into your mountain and find a shaker whose hands and heart are true. He lived a life through hell and suffering to show us, if John Henry can do it, then so can you. Thank you. I know that's incredibly long. Yeah. Yeah, we'll do one more. Yeah, we have time. Great. Here we go.